Hello, everyone, and welcome back once again to On the Couch with David and Travis.
And this was episode number 13, how do you say
Lilliputian Hitcher.
Well, he's got a good vocabulary. He's an
I'm the
teacher.
English teacher, so I should
How
know
did you
that
explain? I asked him what that word meant. How did you
It's
explain?
from Gulliver's Travels.
Yeah.
So Gulliver went to Brobdingnag, which is the big people, and then Lilliput is the small people, and it's called Lilliputian when things are small now. And Brobdingnagian.
So Jack Black was whatever. Jason Segel was a Lilliputian.
Lilliputian.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Beautiful. I liked this episode. I think there was a lot to it that made it more interesting than the average one of this show.
I'm glad that the three pilots are almost not in it at all.
Yeah, they were definitely in the background, which is, I think, interesting because we have gotten a lot of focus on them, and we're going to get a lot of focus on them, but the side characters are important too. Particularly, this was a Ritsuko episode, and I say this about almost every character, but she's a character I really like. I think this is a good, start of cracking open what's going on there. What I did like is, I don't know how you feel about this, but obviously the whole sort of idea of it was the Magi, the computer system, is based off her mother, and like everything in this show, it connects back to sort of parental influence.
Yeah.
And I know you're not a huge fan of Oedipus things and stuff like that, but I think it's very interesting how this show explores the influence your upbringing has on you.
Well, I was going to say, I view it more as, rather than a parent kind of thing, it's more of a previous experience kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't believe in the whole Freud stuff.
You don't believe it in a literal sense.
No. But I think what you've experienced in the past obviously affects you in the present. And a big person in your past, if they are in your lives, are your parents. They're with you all the time when you're younger, and then you slowly, drift away from them as you grow older. So it makes sense that it would affect her.
And it's great how the show looks at it, too, because it's not, it's kind of, you could say black and white, everybody's exactly like their parents. But I think this show does a good job of exploring how some people, without even realizing it, turn out exactly like their parents, and some people turn out to be the exact opposite. Either way, it's a reaction or an influence. And we see a little bit of that in this episode, where we'll get a little bit more into it, like I always say. But you can pretty much trace any character in this show to mommy issues or daddy issues.
Okay. What I liked the most was that the angel was this weird mass of nanomachines.
Yes.
Which I thought was very inventive, and I did not see it coming. I never even thought of, this is what an angel could be. So I thought it was cool, and it was interesting, and it was unique, and that really carried this episode for me, I think.
I think that's great, too, because you get into this cycle where you're okay, the angel is always going to be something that I really can't even comprehend. It's always something really bestial or even nonsense looking.
Yeah.
Well, what's the next logical step once we've seen about, 7, 8, 9 of these guys that all look like disturbing creatures? Well, it's something we can't even really see. It's a virus, which is cool. I think it sort of gets to the idea, again, of changing our expectations. An angel can be anything, even if we can't even understand what it is.
And I think my favorite segment of this episode is actually when that segment with, Misato and Ritsuko, and they're doing the test, and then it turns out, this angel infects everything, and there's a good 2-minute chunk where it's just super loud and everyone's yelling, and it's going absolutely insane, and it was a sensory overload, but in the best way possible, because you're wow, this is actually what the situation would be where you are in this sensory overload position for, we were only in it for 2 minutes, but it felt like forever, and for them, it would obviously feel like forever, that they're running around and yelling and trying to fix everything. So I liked that scene, because I felt like it felt very real to what was happening in the story.
What I really like about this episode is if you look at it on a grand synopsis scale, what happens? There's a virus. How do we fight the virus? You hack it, we hacked it, we're done. But the way that this 22 minutes is told, both with the visuals and the music and the sound effects and the VO, makes it extremely interesting. The angles aren't the most super creative camera angles in the world, but with the designs of what we're looking at, the extreme colors, a lot of blues in this episode. It's very blue because it's industrious. It's mechanical.
Yeah.
And I think that works a lot, just for creating an environment that's more enjoyable to look at when, on the grand scale, the story is somewhat basic.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a minor, I guess, a little nitpick. But, just because sometimes it's Evangelion, sometimes it's Evangelion. It seems like sometimes they say Caspar and some characters say Casper.
Yes. Yep.
Which I don't know if they just like didn't talk about it ahead of time what it's supposed to be. I'm assuming that's what it is.
Yeah, I'm guessing.
Because I don't know. I guess Caspar sounds better when you're saying it with Melchior and Balthazar. But
Yeah.
it is Casper, isn't it?
No, I think it's Caspar.
But it's ER.
No, it's AR.
Nope. I wrote it down.
Oh, really? I thought it was AR.
I wrote it down specifically for watching it. CASPER.
Oh, I thought it was A.
At least how they display it on the screen with the other Magi.
Huh. Never mind then.
I liked how, just a little visual touch, I like how when they crack open the Magi, the like sort of core or whatever looks like a human brain kind of. Because it plays into the idea of these sort of biomechanics, which is what the Evangelion units are supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I think having like this weird combination of machine and human is just like on its own sort of a disturbing idea.
Well, it's the uncanny valley realized to the extreme of, is it human, is it machine, and we do not have the thought processes to interpret how it could possibly be both at the same time. And I think even like there's the point in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood where, you know, it's the famous one where the scientist turns his daughter into a dog and morphs them together, which is obviously like really taboo and like really like freaks people out. But I feel like if in real life we are actually combining people with machines, like to that extent where it's more machine than person, I think that is really freaky.
It's just a really uncomfortable place. It's like chimeras or like human experimentation. It's just like a really uncomfortable subject and visual to look at. And obviously they aren't like delving into it, but just to have it there kind of puts you in.
And it's just such a distinct difference that it's really, I mean, for lack of a better word, it's really uncanny.
Yeah.
Like, it's just freaky.
I like the idea of the three points of the computer being her as a woman, her as a scientist, and her as a mother. Because part of me is kind of like, well, that's kind of stupid. But the other part, I think if I think about it a little more, it's like those are three interesting personality aspects that a person would have that kind of are in a fight with each other.
Yeah.
Like it's sort of like the maternal instinct with the logical instinct of a scientist with the less predictable, more human aspect of just, let's say, being a woman.
And the expectations of being a woman and being a scientist and being a mother and what those expectations are. I like the idea of the machine being in conflict, and that's how it controls itself, is that it is in conflict, which is a nice contrast with the angel, where everything's in sync. You know, and it always adapts together completely, which ultimately ends up being its downfall.
That was interesting, the whole evolution side plot of it.
Yeah, so it's like every single machine worked together with the angel, but ultimately that was its weakness, was that every single machine evolved together, whereas with the machines, with the Magi, they're all in conflict, and that's why it can work well. So I thought that was interesting. It was fun.
We also get some good sort of, like, I think they're very brief, but I think we get some sort of good character moments with Ritsuko. Particularly the one that stood out to me was where she's talking to Masato, and they're in, like, that, I don't know, machine type thing. And Masato's like, hey, this is just like when we're in college. And Ritsuko's like, you know, whatever. That's your thing. And I think it's just supposed to illustrate how Masato is still kind of the same person she used to be, and maybe hasn't grown up as much. And Ritsuko sort of puts that whole aspect of her life, like it's kind of irrelevant to her. I think that's two very different, like, that's people, you know, there's people who are like, oh yeah, remember college, that was great. And there's people who are like, let's not talk about college.
Well, and there's people who are distinctly different now than they were previously. I don't know, I think we're similar, but also different from who we were, 6 years ago or 5 years ago when we were in college, in high school, and like, I feel like in 5 or 6 years from now, I'll be a little different too. So I understand.
So I guess overall, the only other thing is the music. I don't think it's any new pieces of music in this episode, but I felt like it worked better in this. Again, maybe just because we were seeing something so different from what we'd seen before. You know, it wasn't Angels Assemble, fight it, oh we fought at the end. It was a little bit different. Yeah. So I guess overall for me, it's a good change of pace episode. It's entertaining. I think it's a little suspenseful too. I mean, obviously you're not on the edge of your seat, but more so than the average let's just fight it episode. Yeah. All right. Sort of summation or... No, I think that was great. So we'll see you next time. So episode 14.